everyone, and welcome back to the 7 Elements in Ethics and Compliance Book Club. As some of you may already know, today will be my last meeting as the co-host after 3.5 incredible years of co-hosting alongside Ellen. I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity and to be able to connect with so many of you, and as well as the amazing authors like Tom, who we're going to talk to tonight. It's really been a wonderful experience, but I'm really excited to announce that I'm going to pass the torch to a new co-host, which is Denise Tudor. Some of you may know her from participating in the book club, and I'm sure she will do a great job, probably better than I ever did. So I'm really excited to see what direction the book club goes in, and I do plan to attend as a participant, so you won't be able to get rid of me completely, I don't think. And I'm really excited about the book we have in September, which we'll talk more about later. So I just wanted to say, okay, let's see, there's no one else in the waiting room. Okay. Tonight we have Tom Fox, the author of Upping Your Game, How Compliance and Risk Management Move to 2030 and Beyond. Tom is founder of the Compliance Podcast Network, and over the past 15 years, he's been the general counsel and chief compliance officer. He is now an independent consultant, assisting companies with anti-corruption, anti-bribery compliance, and international transaction issues. He specializes in bringing business solutions to compliance problems. Tom is the author of the award-winning FCPA Compliance and Ethics blog and several books, a few of which we've discussed as part of this book club. He's well-known and frequent speaker on compliance and ethics issues, social media use, and corporate leadership. Please welcome Tom.
We're so glad to have you again, Tom. Thank you for joining us and this brave new book that you have. So you opened the book with kind of reframing of the Trump administration's executive order pausing the FCPA enforcement. And your point here is this is really a turning point for everybody in the ethics and compliance profession. What inspired you to view this moment not as a setback, but as a unique opportunity for transformation in the compliance field?
I have to say, and my fanboyness and fandom will shine brightly here because it's really been the leadership of Wei Chen. And Wei Chen, I think, was the first person who used the term operationalization of compliance. And to me, that meant putting compliance directly into the business process. When I started in compliance, it was policies and procedures written by lawyers for lawyers. And I got hired initially to translate policies and procedures from legalese to civilianese. And so we have been moving in this direction, Ellen, I think for quite some time, once we got past the let's just comply with this law role of the first decade of this year when we had the first explosion of FCPA growth. And then we began to see how can we integrate compliance more directly into the business operations. And I started using the phrase more effective compliance equates to more efficient business processes, equates to greater ROI, because I saw compliance I saw the COSO framework for internal controls as the framework for compliance, and those are financial controls. And it began to dawn on me, this is really about financial stuff. Mm-hmm. And Wei Chen sort of coined that phrase. I fully embraced it and tried to think through how can I help compliance officers operationalize compliance to make their businesses run more efficiently, whether it was through internal controls, whether it was through third-party risk management, whether it was through incentives or discipline, whatever it may have been. And so I think we've been heading in this direction for some time. And then the president's announcement came out, and I think many of us were stunned for a couple of days because it was not clear what all of that meant. And I was one of those people. And even my wife said, what are you going to do? And I think it was 2 days after that, once again, Wei Chen, leading the way, wrote a blog post and said, let's look at this as an opportunity. Let's look at this as a way to demonstrate that real business value. And her suggestion was, she had 3 suggestions. She ended with, it's time to up our game, or it's time to up your game. So that's where the title of the book comes from, Upping Your Game. And unabashedly and unashamedly stealing her phrase, Thankfully, she didn't trademark it. But she talked about an emphasis on the ethics in ethics and compliance. And so I wanted to take her concept of upping your game in a different direction for the compliance professional, because I wanted to wed it to what I saw as the movement towards greater business efficiency with effective compliance. And that I think at this point, with AI, with machine learning, with large language models, with small language models, we are at a point where we can dramatically increase the business value. We can embed compliance to move at the speed of business because of AI, and systems that were built in the last decade, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit later, that cost hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars. We didn't call AI, we called data analytics, or would encompass machine learning. Anyway, those bespoke systems are now incredibly affordable. And there are companies in our space that for $25,000 or $50,000 annual license fee, you have the power of literally a $1 billion AML system at your fingertips. And so you can run these types of compliance requirements more efficiently, more effectively, and you can embed it in your business operations to run it at the speed of compliance. That's sort of point one. Point two was the other challenge that I felt from Wei Chen was, if we don't up our game, what will happen to us? And if we are viewed as, well, the president says we're not going to investigate bribe payments, and companies say we're not going to get in trouble, you, Mr. or Ms. Compliance Officer, go back there with internal audit. We'll call you when you need you, but don't expect a call. And so I think we're also at an inflection point of our profession. The final point is the speed of change. And although this had not happened when I wrote the book, let me just pick on tariffs, because that's the one front of mind for me right now. There was perhaps no surprise tariffs came, but there has been surprise that tariffs came and they went away. Tariffs, then they came back, and they were suspended, and they were modified. And so over the course of 6 weeks, we've had 4 or 5 different major tariff changes that have greatly changed the calculus of what you have to spend on your supply chain. And you have to be able to respond to them. If a change comes in the morning, you better be ready to respond in the afternoon. But if you step back to the way a compliance professional thinks, we manage risk. That risk can be compliance risk, but it's just risk. And that risk format or that framework is you identify a risk, you assess your risk, you put a risk management strategy in place, you train on that risk management strategy, you implement, you monitor the results, and you improve as appropriate. That framework works for every risk. And if we can have a risk management framework that runs at the speed of AI, we can lead the business in the management of risk. And so the last kind of thing I'm hoping to do with this book is elevate compliance to something different. Matt Kelly has talked about risk for a long time, and I've bought into it as well. And so let's be the risk managers for the company. So when something shifts, senior executives come to compliance and say, what do we do? We have 3 different scenarios we can present to them, and then they can make the decision. It's really that combination of things, Ellen, but it really was that inflection point of where things have been coalescing together probably for 10 years. And I just felt like now was the time to start talking about that shift.
I just want to pull on that thread about ethics, because I know you've heard me say this before. Compliance is the floor, ethics is the ceiling. And when we think about shifts like the shifts in the Department of Justice's prioritization and not enforcing FCPA, but maybe going after sanctions and False Claims Act violations, those things are inevitable. But when you think about ethics, right, and your company having a set of values and operating to them, I think that's one of the things that will always be there, right? And how you apply it may change, but the Federal Sentencing Guidelines added the word ethics in 2004, and yet we're all chief compliance officers. We're not chief ethics and compliance officers. So I think Wei Chen has got an extremely valid point, and I'm just wondering, can this platform, when we think about it, also sell ethics the same way we've sold compliance?
Not only can, we have to, because at the speed of which business will run in 2030, we have to operate ethically in compliance with integrity, and we have to have a culture that proactively stops something from becoming a violation before it happens. And that's the power of data analytics that will give the compliance officer information to say, let's look at this. But I think ethics is actually more important now. One, because of what the president has said, but also the speed of change, because businesses are going to have to adapt to that change. And if you don't have that ethical foundation, on a webinar today, someone said, now is not the time to be fixing your ethics. The time was 5 years ago to prepare for today. And they were absolutely right. And I think it's even more important, Ellen.
Okay.
Definitely. So you describe a shift from compliance as a gatekeeping function to a strategic business partner enabled by AI. How do you envision the role of compliance professionals to evolve as AI becomes more embedded in operational workflows?
So I typically use the example of the easiest one in my mind, which is third parties. In 2001, 100% of FCPA violations involve third parties. In 2023, 100% of FCPA violations involve third parties. Still the highest risk. But what if we could do the entire third-party risk management strategy literally at the speed of AI embedded directly in the business operations, where the business unit was taking the information that the compliance run AI gave them and managing a third party? So that relationship, or that 5-part strategy, is as follows. Business justification. What's the business justification for hiring this third party? Number 2, questionnaire. Number 3, due diligence based on that questionnaire and analysis of that due diligence. Step number 4, contract compliance, contractual terms and conditions in your contract. Now you've got a contract signed, but this is when the work starts, because you have to manage that relationship. With AI, you can manage every aspect of that relationship. You can manage every invoice. You can manage every payment. You can manage every interaction. You can manage everything about that relationship that allows you to be proactive to stop anything from becoming a true FCPA violation. And you can do that directly with the business. I don't think you're going to lose compliance integrity by doing that, but it allows you to do all of those steps. It was not unusual for a due diligence to take 2 to 4 weeks, particularly if it was a level 3 due diligence, boots on the ground. If you can do that in 2 days, you have now saved 2 to 4 weeks, and time is money, and you can speed up your process. That same process works for mergers and acquisitions. That same process works in terms of reporting and speak up. If information comes in, and AI can route that, can triage it, if you have a large enough database for machine learning, can get it to the right people, can flag what needs to be done, can flag potential areas, documents in the company's database, and you can have a much quicker and expeditious resolution of a report, but once again with compliance or human oversight, that will allow you to stop or rather the 120-day deadline once you find out about it, if someone goes to the Department of Justice or Securities and Exchange Commission. One of my personal favorites is I'm going to call it compliance education. We used to call it training and engagement, or training and communications. I'm sorry, I should know that. But, we move from a long PowerPoint. Then we moved to 1 hour annual training. Then the DOJ told us, okay, we want targeted training for gatekeepers or high-risk individuals, and we want effective training. How do you determine effectiveness? Most of us took a 10-question test at the end, and we did it till we got it right, however many we had to get. But AI can maybe dig a little bit deeper and see if there's some real issues that someone's not understanding. But the other thing an AI can do is they can take all of the data about an employee. What's their job? Who are they doing it with? Are they in sales? Where are they selling? Who are they selling to? What are they selling? All of these. What are their travel? What's their historical travel patterns? Who are the people that they have dealt with, not only in the company, but outside the company as well? And AI can craft a short form communications message, 60 seconds, 2 minutes, something like that, as a reminder or an engagement with that employee. Hey, we see you're going to this high-risk country and you're going to meet with this foreign official. Please remember these points. Or you had this issue 7 years ago, and here was some of the issues we had, and here's some of the issues to think about now. What are you going to do if someone demands a bribe from you? What are you going to do if you're stopped at the border and say, it cost you $50 to get through on that passport, or your shot card is not sufficient? So I think that in each one of the basically hallmarks of an effective compliance program, we can put an active AI-driven business process in place to move things much quicker, much faster, with more efficiency, all within the framework of either the 10 hallmarks or the evaluation of corporate compliance programs that we're all very comfortable with, to move business literally at the speed of AI.
It's fascinating, but I think all of us take a pause and that we know that AI sometimes makes mistakes, has delusions, and when you maybe over automate or don't have those human checkpoints, could the systems actually be a risk within themselves?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why you cannot do this without a human in the loop, but that human in the loop must be knowledgeable. So, as counterintuitive as it's going to sound, I think it's going to be even more important that the next generation of compliance professionals knows compliance. And if they see something that they know is wrong, then they can not accept it, they can correct it. I think certainly Kate and Ellen, if we put something into AI and it came back and we knew it was wrong, we could see it and we'd be comfortable with knowing, no, that's not right. And I know that's not right. I can't tell you where I saw it, but I can tell you it's not right. When you get to that level, that's when AI can be a huge benefit, because every process requires a second set of eyes. And here, that human is the second set of eyes. So you're absolutely spot on. It is not an all-encompassing panacea. I think it's going to make compliance officers not only more important, but more important and better for the compliance profession, that we will have a skill set that frankly others in the organization don't, because they haven't managed risk. They may have been in sales, they may have been HR, they may have been in a variety of corporate functions, but the management of risk was not high on their priority.
So one of the examples you have in the book is Wells Fargo, and they're the poster child, are they not, for aid is great and putting in incentives for actually misconduct. And at least in some of those cases, it's not that people didn't call their hotline. It's that when they did, the reaction was they were retaliated against. So they've got an AI-enabled case management system, which I think, as you point out, can probably save a lot of time and effort. But my question for you is, can AI save their culture?
It can help in their culture. And a couple of sort of background points to this. When I wrote the book, first of all, I used AI to write the book. And I talk about that in the book. And the reason I talk about it is I want everyone to understand you can do the same process to write a book. So I used AI as a research assistant and an editorial assistant. So for each chapter, I told AI, I want a Harvard Business Review or MIT Sloan Management or Law Review article on this topic because I want to use a case study. And I was stunned to find that everything I talked about that we should do in 2030 has been done. And as far back as 2015, as I said earlier, we just didn't call it AI. And we call it something different. And it cost hundreds of millions. So this Wells Fargo AI, and that it was basically machine learning, a machine learning reporting system that directed the report to the right entity or group. It recorded it and then measured or captured what happened to the person who reported. And now Wells Fargo was on their own journey, as we all know, and we have to give them a shout out because 2 days ago they had their asset cap lifted, which was the last sanction. And part of this story is them taking all those steps to get to the point where the asset cap was lifted, in spite of the fact they did some horrible things. But they built a bespoke system with Wells Fargo information, which helped build or probably rebuild a culture of trust within the organization. So can I tell you that AI changed the culture? I'm not sure I can tell you that, but I can tell you that AI is a part of a culture and can be a part of a culture of trust within an organization if management fully explains what they're doing and people buy into it.
Great, thanks, Tom. Okay.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite examples from the book, the Wells Fargo one, given they're so famous for not doing the right thing, but it seems like this was a good attempt at using technology to do the right thing and demonstrate that. So in recent years, many of us have learned about and possibly used AI chatbots in our personal and professional life. AI-driven chatbots can be used to provide instant, on-demand compliance guidance to employees. What are some common misconceptions that compliance professionals may have about these chatbots?
Chatbots can actually be the easiest thing to create for your compliance program because even I figured out using ChatGPT how to create a ring-fenced compliance amount of compliance data, which is a company's policies and procedures, code of conduct, internal controls, everything that an employee has access to. Now, this is not OpenAI. This is documents specifically put into a chat box. So we'll talk about my favorite company, Fox Energy Company. Fox Energy Company decides they're going to have a chat bot for their compliance program. So they do just that. They put in code of conduct. They put in the internal controls. They put in the policies and the procedures. They put in the supplier code of conduct. They put in anything else that they call a part of their compliance program. And then they create a chat bot, which actually ChatGPT can do for you. And you can ask questions, whatever that question may be, because it's looking at the information that's in your ring-fenced database. So you can do it relatively easily. You can do it in a way that only your employees will only have access to your compliance program and compliance policy information. And the key is test it, monitor it. But because of the ring-fenced nature, you may get an hallucination. But when I do the smaller ring-fenced things, I don't get hallucinations. I tend to get hallucinations when I use OpenAI.
It's interesting. And one of the things that I've been thinking quite a bit about recently is choice architecture. And when you think about that and nudges, so again, I'm going back to the culture piece, right? How do you get people to make the right decision? But I think there's an application here as well, which is saying to folks, not like your example of, okay, you're going to travel to Singapore or Vietnam or wherever it might be. Here are the things you need to know. There could be things that are nudges of your expense report is late, or this didn't have a receipt, or have you thought about this policy, that policy? I think some of the possibilities are endless, but also I think when we refine our systems and our processes, if we think about it, and sometimes people call this compliance by design, right? Or privacy by design. You make it so easy to make the right decision and so hard to make the wrong decisions, right? That people are really going to be doing the right thing almost automatically. And what applications do you possibly see for kind of choice architecture aspects?
So the thing I would see there, Ellen, is once again, I would advocate you create a ringed fence, and they're called small language models, SLMs, as opposed to large language models, but have a database that puts that type of information in, and an employee could make a query. And you can make it as simple as, and I love your expense report idea, because that is the most basic, yet can be one of the most powerful internal controls there is. And particularly if everyone in the company, as in the manager reviews it, as in accounts payable reviews it, everybody does their job. I think the days of looking at an expense report as just an open cash box are long gone.
Interesting. Just when you think about it and all of the different kinds of applications. What do you recommend for compliance leaders to measure their ROI on AI-driven tools to demonstrate value? Are we going to have to reduce staff if we increase our technology warehouse, our set of tools? What happens to our staff?
Those are two separate issues.
Yeah. Yes.
And on the efficiency, we're going to have to learn how to calculate the value of being able to do something faster. Years ago, I heard a presentation on M&A of I can't remember which company, but they had refined their M&A process so that they were actually doing pre-acquisition due diligence on a routine basis on a number of companies, even if they weren't their targets. So they had the data, and when the CEO says, I want to look at these guys, they were ready to go. And so then they were able to put a value they were comfortable with and go to the company and say, we want to buy you for X. Whether they accepted X or whether they negotiated on X, then they were able to close. So it's that, and that company felt like it put them in a leadership position in their industry, or at least leading their competitors, because they could pivot so quickly. Think about any of the issues we're facing now. Think about the tariffs. Think about, we find out the Uyghurs from the Uyghur Forced Labor Act are no longer in Xinjiang. They're all over China. At some point, we're going to figure out how to track that. How are you going to respond to that? How are you going to respond to what we learned from the pandemic when 2/3 of your supply chain goes down due to some event, whether it's a geopolitical event, whether it's a revolution, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a whatever? How can you pivot more quickly? So that's what we're going to be able to do. And we're going to have to learn how to measure that. And I'm sure some smart finance guy can do that.
Oh, we usually would do breakout rooms at this point, but I think we've got just a small groups here. So we'll just keep going with questions. Don't you think? Okay.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.